Consider two news headlines, both reporting on the exact same economic data. One screams, "Economic miracle, unemployment plummets." The other laments, "Job market collapse, millions face uncertainty." Both might use factual data, yet they paint wildly different realities. If you felt a stronger pull towards one, or a moment of confusion, you've just witnessed a fundamental mechanism of persuasion, a technique refined not just by media, but by magicians for centuries. What you observed wasn't just differing perspectives, it was a carefully orchestrated cognitive illusion. Every political manipulation tactic, from subtle framing to outright falsehoods, mirrors the principles of stage magic, exploiting the predictable, often unconscious, ways our minds process information. This isn't about intelligence, it's about the inherent architecture of human cognition. We are exploring why your brain, a marvel of evolution, can be so susceptible to political tricks that, in hindsight, might seem astonishingly simple. Tricks a skeptical 5-year-old might question if they weren't already packaged in adult complexity and emotional charge. The core question is, what are these cognitive security flaws, and how are they systematically exploited in the political arena? The political propagandist's toolkit is remarkably similar to that of a stage magician, relying on exploiting the brain's inherent processing shortcuts. First, consider misdirection. A magician makes you look at their right hand, perhaps with a flashy gesture or a puff of smoke, while their left hand executes the crucial move. In politics, this translates to focusing public attention on a sensational scandal, a celebrity feud, or a divisive cultural issue, while significant policy changes or legislative maneuvers occur quietly in the background, unscrutinized. Neuroscience confirms this vulnerability. Our attentional spotlight is surprisingly narrow. Out of approximately 11 million bits of sensory information our brain receives every second, we can only consciously process about 40. This vast discrepancy means we are constantly filtering, and what gets filtered can be expertly guided. Then there's priming. A magician might say, "Think of any card," but through subtle cues, prior setup, or forced choices, they've already guided you to the card they intend. Politically, priming occurs through loaded language. The phrase death tax evokes a far more negative emotional response than estate tax, though they refer to the same thing. Similarly, end-of-life counseling sounds compassionate, while death panels sounds terrifying. The linguistic frame primes an emotional response before rational analysis can even begin. And finally, the false choice. A magician offers, pick a card, any card, from a deck where the outcome is already controlled. In politics, this manifests as the "you're either with us or against us" dichotomy, deliberately ignoring nuanced positions, compromises, or alternative solutions, forcing a simplified, often emotionally charged alignment. These magic tricks are not historical artifacts, they are actively deployed in contemporary political discourse. Take the climate debate. A common misdirection tactic is to intensely focus public discourse on individual carbon footprints, encouraging recycling, biking, and reducing personal consumption. While these actions are positive, this focus can divert attention and a sense of responsibility from the vastly larger impact of unregulated industries and systemic policy failures, the true elephants in the room. It's like the magician's right hand waving a colorful scarf. Another technique is cherry-picking data, presenting photographs of unusually cold weather events or isolated data points that suggest cooling trends without contextualizing them within long-term global warming patterns is akin to a magician showing you only the cards that support their desired narrative, hiding the rest of the deck. The appeal to authority is also frequently manipulated. Statements like "scientists say" are powerful, but often lack crucial context. Which scientists? Are they experts in the relevant field? Who funds their research? A lab coat doesn't automatically confer unbiased truth, much like a magician's top hat doesn't actually contain magic. In the realm of election integrity discussions, confirmation bias is ruthlessly exploited. Individuals are often fed a steady stream of evidence, anecdotal accounts, selectively edited videos, or unsubstantiated claims that exclusively confirms their pre-existing beliefs about electoral fraud or fairness. The availability heuristic, our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, makes vivid, emotionally charged stories feel more real and representative than comprehensive statistical data. This can lead to pattern recognition gone awry, where individuals perceive conspiracies and intentional wrongdoing in random data clusters or isolated irregularities, much like seeing faces in clouds. Our brains are wired to find patterns, even where none exist. The manipulation continues across various domains. In health policy debates, particularly around vaccines, fear-based misdirection is common. Graphic emphasis on extremely rare side effects, often presented without the statistical context of overall risk versus benefit, can overshadow the larger public health picture. The authority of medical figures is also leveraged. The mere image of a doctor in a white coat can lend unearned credibility to a claim, as our brains are wired to associate such symbols with expertise, a kind of costume equals credibility shortcut. Social proof is hijacked when arguments like "everyone I know thinks" are presented as evidence, ignoring that personal social bubbles are rarely representative of broader reality. Discussions around social media content moderation frequently employ a false dichotomy, framing the issue as an absolute choice between total free speech and oppressive safetyism, thereby obscuring the vast and complex middle ground where nuanced policies for platform governance could be explored. A victimization narrative, such as "they don't want you to see this truth," can be particularly potent, making the audience feel special, chosen, and privy to forbidden knowledge, which paradoxically increases the allure of the information, regardless of its veracity, a psychological phenomenon known as the Streisand effect, where attempts to suppress information can inadvertently amplify its spread. And concerning economic inequality, a classic distraction technique involves amplifying cultural grievances and social wedge issues to divert public attention from economic policies that may exacerbate disparities. Scapegoating, blaming economic problems on immigrant populations or minority groups, is another form of misdirection, shifting focus from systemic causes to easily targeted out groups. The just world fallacy, the cognitive bias that the world is fundamentally fair and people get what they deserve, can also be exploited, making people resistant to acknowledging structural advantages or disadvantages, preferring the simpler narrative that hard work alone guarantees success. Understanding why these political magic tricks are so effective requires a brief dive into the neuroscience of our biases. Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman's work on System 1 and System 2 thinking is crucial here. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort and no sense of voluntary control. It's our intuitive, emotional, gut reaction brain. System 2 allocates attention to the effortful mental activities that demand it, including complex computations. It's our slower, more deliberate, analytical brain. Political manipulators primarily target System 1. They aim for an amygdala hijack, where fear, anger, or excitement, processed rapidly by the amygdala, our brain's threat detector, effectively short-circuits the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and executive function. When emotions run high, critical thinking capacity diminishes. Furthermore, our brains are wired for tribalism. For our ancestors, strong in-group loyalty and suspicion of outgroups were crucial for survival. These ancient circuits persist, making us susceptible to us versus them narratives. Political ideologies can activate these tribal circuits, leading to unwavering loyalty to one's own side and an almost automatic dismissal or demonization of opposing views, regardless of evidence. This isn't stupidity, it's deeply ingrained neurobiology. The dopamine reward system also plays a role. Being right, or having our existing beliefs confirmed, releases dopamine, creating a pleasurable sensation. This can lead to confirmation bias becoming addictive, as we subconsciously seek out information that reinforces our views and avoid challenging data, creating echo chambers that are easily exploited. This is the magician's force in politics, creating the illusion of independent thought and choice while subtly guiding beliefs and behaviors by leveraging these inherent cognitive mechanisms. They make people feel smart for arriving at a predetermined conclusion, all by skillfully playing their own biases against them. So, how can one become untrickable, or at least more resistant to these pervasive manipulations? It involves consciously engaging System 2 thinking, essentially learning the magician's secrets to deconstruct their illusions. The first step is to slow down the show. Before reacting to any political content, especially if it evokes a strong emotional response, pause. Ask yourself, what am I not being shown? Look for the misdirection. While my attention is drawn to this specific outrage or detail, what larger context or alternative information might be deliberately obscured? This means actively searching for the magician's hidden left hand. Second, question the setup. Who benefits from me believing this particular narrative? What financial, political, or ideological interests are served by this message? Consider how your perception might change if you encountered the opposite evidence or framing first. Are you being offered genuine choices, or is it an illusion of choice, where all apparent options lead to a preferred outcome for the manipulator? Third, and critically, check your emotional state. If a piece of political information makes you feel intensely angry, fearful, vindicated, or superior, recognize that your rational brain is likely taking a back seat. Strong emotions are a primary indicator that your System 1 is in overdrive, and you might be susceptible to manipulation. Paradoxically, the more a piece of information perfectly confirms what you already believe, the more skepticism you should apply. It's too easy to accept what aligns with our biases. Finally, try to reverse engineer the trick. Ask, what specific cognitive bias is this message likely targeting? Confirmation bias, availability heuristic, anchoring, appeal to authority. Consider what the message would look like if you fundamentally disagreed with its premise. What would someone actively trying to fool you want you to think, feel, or do in this situation? This metacognitive approach, thinking about your thinking, is a powerful defense. Perhaps the biggest trick of all, the meta-revelation in this grand political magic show, is the illusion of immunity. The deeply held belief, I'm too smart, too informed, or too independent to fall for such manipulations, is precisely the cognitive blind spot that makes an individual exceptionally vulnerable. It's the equivalent of a spectator confidently asserting they know how every trick is done, only to be repeatedly fooled because their overconfidence prevents them from seeing the actual mechanics at play. Crucially, it's vital to recognize that these manipulative techniques are not exclusive to any single political ideology, party, or persuasion. Both sides of most political spectrums employ identical psychological tactics. They simply tailor the content and emotional triggers to their specific target audience. The real sleight of hand is making people passionately despise the other side's tricks while remaining blissfully unaware or even appreciative of the very same techniques when used to reinforce their own beliefs. The true call to action, then, is not merely to spot these tricks in content you already disagree with. That's relatively easy. The real challenge, the genuine exercise in critical thinking, is to start noticing and deconstructing these manipulative techniques in information presented by sources you generally trust, in messages that align with your own worldview. This requires a profound dose of intellectual humility, the willingness to entertain the possibility, I might be wrong about this, or my perspective might be shaped by biases I haven't yet recognized. Seek out steelman arguments, the strongest, most charitable, and well-reasoned versions of opposing viewpoints, not to be converted, but to understand the most robust form of the other side's logic. Remember, being manipulated doesn't inherently make you unintelligent. It makes you human, equipped with a brain that evolved for different challenges than navigating a 24/7 information war. The pivotal question isn't whether you're being influenced. You almost certainly are. But whether you are becoming increasingly aware of how and why.